Welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of Fair Territory. I'm Ken Rosenthal, and people always ask me, Ken, do you ever run out of things to write about? And actually, it's the opposite problem. Covering the entire sport, there is always, almost always, too much to write about. And that is the case right now, and that is the case with this particular show. We're not going to go too in depth today on the Jose Alvarado suspension, which obviously hurts the Phillies bullpen. He'll be out for the postseason. He'll return this season after the 80 games, but no playoffs for him. We're not going to go too in deep on the Twins' 13-game winning streak, though, of course, it's an amazing feat by a team that started off so badly. And we're not even going to get too in depth on the Cardinals' 7-2 road trip, which was really impressive. They're only 2 games back in the NL Central. I've got other things to discuss, and don't yell at me for not getting too deep into the topics most passionate to your heart. The things I want to discuss are the things that, to me, seem most newsworthy from the weekend. And let's start with the Baltimore Orioles, the firing of Brandon Hyde. Not exactly a surprise. Their game Friday night was horrible, and it was the kind of game that you look at and say, I wouldn't be surprised if the manager gets fired tomorrow. That's what I said watching that loss to the Nationals. But the real question here is not why this happened and not a rehash of all that Mike Elias did as general manager to not set up Brandon Hyde very well for this season. I want to look ahead, and I want to show you first just how bad the Orioles situation is right now. They are 15-30, and let's look at the AL East standings for starters to show you just how buried they are even at this early stage of the season. Check it out. They're 15-30. They're 11 and a half games back in a division in which only the Yankees are playing well. They're the only team above 500. I know teams have rallied in the past, the Nationals in 2019, the Astros last season, and others. I don't know that it's happening for this team. So where are we going with this? As I said on the Fox broadcast Saturday, on the pregame show, Tony Mansolino is the interim manager. I don't know that he's going to be the manager the rest of the season if they're truly intent on salvaging this thing and shooting for a wild card. This is a very inexperienced staff. Mansolino's never managed in the majors. You've got a first-year bench coach, you've got a first-year hitting coach, and a second-year pitching coach. Now, these guys might all be quite good at their jobs. I understand that. But is this the group that's going to lead this team out of its current state? I don't know that the answer to that is yes. And then, if this team cannot rally, and right now they have the 4th worst record in the major leagues, the 4th worst. If they cannot rally, then what do you do at the deadline? And if Mike Elias, in the ownership's estimation, is perhaps not the right guy, then what? Is he the guy you let take this team apart at the deadline? They've got some interesting pieces. Cedric Mullins Jr., he's streaky, but he's a good center fielder still. Zach Eflin, I know he had a bad start the other day, but he's a good starting pitcher. Sir Anthony Dominguez in the bullpen. Frankly, this team is a mess. I don't see them coming out of it. I don't see how that by the deadline they're back in contention. So yes, I see them as sellers. Tyler O'Neill, their big free agent signing from the offseason, well, he's not going anywhere. He's on the injured list for the 16th time in his career. They gave this guy 3 years, $49.5 million. He has an opt-out. Guess what? He's not opting out. Not when he keeps getting hurt. It's his second trip to the IL this season. They just put Kyle Gibson on effectively waivers. They DFA'd him. Top to bottom, this team is a complete mess. And again, the questions in the future, what do you do about the manager for the rest of the season? What do you do at the deadline? They're a lot more pressing now than they were before you fired Brandon Hyde. And the ultimate question is going to be, what does the new ownership, with David Rubenstein as the head of it, what do they do with Mike Elias? Do you hold him responsible for this? Well, yes, you probably should. But does that mean he loses his job? I don't know the answer to that. All right, that's the Orioles. But staying in the AL East, because I was in Boston this weekend, and it was quite an interesting set of circumstances, to say the least. There's no drama in baseball quite like Red Sox drama. I think we can all agree on that. And the Rafael Devers drama has been in the news for quite some time now. It seems that he is not going to play first base. But it also seems that for all the people criticizing him, he's the best DH in baseball. First career walk-off home run on Saturday. Then a grand slam yesterday. He's not the reason they're 1-6 in their last 7, not the reason they're under 500 and largely a disappointment this season. The question remains, though, what are they going to do about first base? Now, the Red Sox on Friday started working out Christian Campbell, the rookie second baseman, at first. And the idea could ultimately be if Campbell can play first, then you can have David Hamilton, a better defender than Campbell, at second. And you open up a spot perhaps for Marcelo Meyer down the line. But I want to show fans just what Alex Cora told reporters yesterday about learning first base. And this applies not just to Campbell, but it really applies to Devers as well. And yes, it was a selfish look on Rafael Devers' part not to be willing to learn the position. But here's what Alex Cora said. It's not easy. He's talking about the transition to first base. We're taking a chance here. This is referencing Campbell. All this talk about this guy can play first and this and that. I can give you 5 examples why it didn't work the last 5 years. It's not just plug a guy over there. Here we go. Let's see what happens. There's more than just standing there and catching the throws. That's the point I made in my column last week, and it's a point that Cora elaborated on, referencing the injuries to Kyle Schwarber and Christian Arroyo trying to play first for the Red Sox, referencing Franchi Cordero. They tried him at first, didn't work. So with Campbell, this is not fait accompli by any stretch of the imagination. And I want to go back to Devers again because he is not the athlete that Campbell is. He's a guy who really is not a very good third baseman. And this assumption that in the middle of a season he can go play first and succeed at it, that's a mighty big assumption. Now, it doesn't mean he shouldn't try. And it doesn't mean when you're making $300 million plus and the team asks you to do something, you shouldn't do it. But at the same time, I've said this from the beginning. It's a big ask, and now they're asking Christian Campbell to do it. We'll see how that goes. All right, finally, this weekend, some really interesting news out of Los Angeles, actually for the last couple of days. First, we had the DFA'ing of Austin Barnes, a guy who had been the longest tenured Dodger until, well, he was DFA'd. And now on Sunday, we get the release of Chris Taylor. He was the longest tenured player on the Dodgers after Barnes. So 2 of their mainstays over the years are now effectively going to be gone. What's interesting about this is not that these 2 guys had secure roster spots and that they should have avoided this fate. No, we could all see this coming. Barnes is not the defender he once was, never really was a hitter. Taylor has had a couple of bad years in a row, and with the emergence of Hyesung Kim, there was simply no spot for him. What's interesting to me is that we're sitting here, it's not even May 20th yet, and the Dodgers are acting with urgency. They're not waiting around to let things marinate. They had Dalton rushing in the minor leagues. He was hitting. They said, okay, Austin Barnes, no. They had Hyesung Kim, a very successful major league debut. Chris Taylor, that's it for you. And the reason they kind of had to act on these matters was not just the performance of those players. Rushing, good prospect, no question. Kim absolutely deserves to be in the major leagues, but there's a question on whether they'll get playing time for them in the majors, both of them, especially now that Tommy Edman is back. That compromises Kim. When Teoscar Hernandez comes back, there becomes a greater question for playing time. And rushing, who knows how much he'll play with Will Smith, the primary catcher. What's interesting here is the NL West standings and the Dodgers, for all this talk of how they were going to run away and ruin baseball. They're not running away and ruining baseball. Look at this. The Padres are 1 game back. The Giants are 1 game back after sweeping the A's this weekend. The Diamondbacks not really playing all that well consistently. They're only 4 out. The Rockies, forget about the Rockies. So here are the Dodgers. They're not running away with anything. And I want to show you also their latest pitching injuries, or the latest version of the injured list, which includes 15 players. These aren't all of them. They've got 3/5 of a rotation on the IL still. Tyler Glasnow, Roki Sasaki, and Blake Snell. And really, an entire bullpen is now on the IL. Brusdar Graterol, Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, Blake Trinan, and Kirby Yates. The Los Angeles Dodgers, ladies and gentlemen, same as it ever was. Armageddon, yes. Arms injured again, yes. It's the Dodgers every year. So this idea that they're running away and ruining baseball, no. They're getting rid of players right now because they feel urgency. They feel like they're getting pressed. They know the importance of winning the division. They know the importance of getting a bye out of the wild card round, and they are not messing around. So that's it. Orioles, Red Sox, Dodgers. We've got more coming up, and we'll be right back after this message.
There's a lot of failure in baseball, and you should also look at your favorite manager and see how he's doing since he took over whatever job that is, because sometimes you can age fast, you can lose hair, and Kratz, we might have an answer for those stressed out managers, and it is
Nutrafol. You might lose hair, but Nutrafol will help you thicken it back up, and you will look as youthful as the first day you were a manager.
That's right. Many hair supplements overpromise and underdeliver, but Nutrafol is different as the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. So start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol, and for a limited time, you can get $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and then enter the promo code FOUL. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FOUL.
Welcome back, and time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk about maybe a story I've written, maybe a trend in the game, maybe something else entirely. And today I want to focus on a story that was published this morning that I co-wrote with Jason Stark. It's about ABS and the coming automated ball strike system that baseball has experimented with in the minor leagues for several years now, experimented with in the futures game last year, and experimented with for the first time in the major leagues or at the major league level in spring training. And the story is about how the conversations around ABS need to continue. And in a competition committee meeting on May 1st, the players were there with the owners and the umpire representatives. And for the first time, the owners or the management of baseball people, revealed to the players that there's a margin for error in the system. You see our story. As MLB weighs its introduction in 2026, the conversation about the automated ball strike system is just beginning. So Corbin Burns told me, yes, there is a margin for error. I don't know that players were aware of it. I don't know that fans were aware of it. This was Corbin speaking, and he made the point that they were told, the players were, that the margin for error can be about a half inch with ABS. Now, when you were watching in spring training, if you did, and you saw the animation for the ABS, you didn't think there was a margin for error. You thought it was just perfect. That's kind of the assumption we all had. Now, that's not a proper assumption because all of these ball tracking systems include some margin for error. They use them in soccer. They use them in tennis. They're going to use them in football to mark downs or mark first downs where they are places on the field. So there's always going to be some margin for error in all of these systems. Usually it's quite minuscule and not as extreme in the league's estimation as a half inch. As the article explains, there are all kinds of ways to measure this. The median outcome of any pitch that is tracked on ABS will be a 0.17 inch margin for error. That's less than 1/5 of an inch. That's the median outcome. There's a 95% confidence level that it'll be something like 0.39, and there's a 99 confidence level that it will be 0.48%. That's the half inch that Corbin Burns is talking about. That's pretty good. It, in the league's estimation, is better than the umpires can do. But the question Burns raised, and the question other players have is this worth it? Is it worth going to this system when the umpires, under a reduced buffer zone, we've written about that as well, and you have to go research it. I'm not going to explain it all here. But under a reduced buffer zone, the umpires are calling balls and strikes more accurately than at any point since StatCast was introduced in 2015. The umps are pretty good. And what the players are asking is, okay, if there is this margin for error, if there is this disparity that potentially could exist, if you're talking about a pitch that can be 1/10 of an inch inside and yet the system sees it as 4/10 of an inch outside, what are we doing here? Again, MLB sees this as still worth the trouble, in my opinion. That's kind of where they are with it. And they haven't made a decision yet. Nothing is decided. But at the same time, the way the competition committee works, and you guys know this, there are 6 owners on that committee. there are 4 players on it, and there is 1 umpire. So anything baseball wants to do, they have the votes to do it. And it certainly seems like, in everyone's estimation, baseball wants this system in place next season. The challenge system, where you get a couple of challenges, and if the call is reversed, you keep your challenge. It's much like replay in that regard. So this discussion that is taking place right now is going to have to continue, because with ABS, it's not just simply implementing that system. You're also changing the definition of the strike zone. It's a different zone than what is currently being called right now. It dips lower at the top, it comes up a little bit at the bottom, and it's narrower on the sides. So it's a different zone. And what the league is going to do in the coming weeks is enable players to see on their dugout iPads how the 2 zones compare, how ABS would call a pitch and how the current umpires are calling a pitch. And that way the players can at least learn or see how this is going to evolve. Remember, the system was only in place in 60% of spring training games. It wasn't in every park. Some parks weren't technologically equipped to do it. So some players, some veteran players who didn't experience this in the minors, have no experience with ABS at all. And there has also been talk of a buffer zone with ABS. And what that would be an area where if ABS called it one way, but it was, say, just 1/10 of an inch of a miss by the umpire, then the umpire would be granted leniency on that pitch and the call would stand. Now, as the article explains, as Jason and I wrote, the league has some problems with that. They're not sure that is the wisest thing to do. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One is the players might not want that. They might just want it called by the ABS zone as accurately as that ABS can do it. And also, if fans are watching an animation and they see a pitch is off, and yet they see that the pitch is upheld, they're not going to like that very much. So that, too, is a conversation that is taking place. And one thing that I will say about the league here, we wrote that article, I don't know, it was about a week or 2 ago, about how the players, the umpires, actually the players and the clubs were not aware of the reduced buffer zone, how it went from 2 inches in the current way the game is called to 3/4 of an inch inside and outside the zone. And it caught the players by surprise. In this particular case, as we go forward with ABS and as these conversations are taking place, it certainly seems like the league is being diligent about soliciting the players' input and the umpires' input for that matter. Now, in the end, will the league do what it wants? Yes, it absolutely will do what it wants. But at the same time, at least they're talking. At least these discussions are ongoing. And in talking to league people, I did not get the sense that while they have the right to ram it down the players' throats and the umpires' throats, I don't know that they want to do that. They want to decide whether this is the right thing to do. And they want to understand the implications of it. Now, part of the implications are that there's going to be margin for error. That's going to have to be accepted. And it's accepted in other sports. You don't see this question come up in soccer and tennis. And by the way, the same technology used for ABS is the technology used in StatCast for all the things that we measure with players' performance. And really, you don't hear ever complaints about that. So it's a really interesting topic. It's going to continue to be an interesting topic. And I would suspect this is not the last time I'll be talking about it. All right, we'll be back after a short message.
If you're a card collector or you'd like to get into card collecting, may I suggest Arena Club and slab packs, which means that you can rip the packs digitally and, of course, get the card that you want. It's also the most trusted name in the game, and I would rather rip packs these days on my phone than sit next to you and have you grabbing one of my physical packs if I was grabbing one.
Yeah, you don't need me grabbing your packs, because last time you grabbed one, it ended up like this card. So let's not have that, and that's why Arena Club is great. They send them to you in these fancy protectors like this Scout Brown card that we have here, and they'll come safe. They're already graded, or you could do like I do and just leave my cards in the showroom and never actually see them physically.
Yeah.
But they're safe, protected, and if I want to sell them, I can.
buy, sell, trade. They offer full transparency, showing every card in the slab pack with the likelihood of pulling each one so you know exactly what's available before you buy. Get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL.
Ah, yes, time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where you guys get to ask me questions. Let's get on with it. The first question comes from Michael, who asks, how realistic is it for Paul Skeens to be traded this year? I'm starting to see this bubble up a little bit on X and some writers speculating as well about the possibility of the Pirates trading Paul Skeens. I do not see it happening this year. Paul Skeens is under club control for 4 more years after this one. The Pirates have many problems, and of course they need to solve those problems, but I don't know that trading Paul Skeens is the way to do it. The way to do it, and I know this might be objectionable in the owner's estimation, Bob Nutting's estimation, the way to do it is to spend money and build around him. Now, I don't expect the Pirates to do that, which is why you're going to hear these questions about Skeens. He has 4 years of club control remaining after this year. He's still cheap. And yes, the Pirates might be inclined to think about trading him before he gets hurt, if he's going to get hurt, which of course is a possibility. But at the same time, where are you as a franchise if you do this? And it also gets back to what I was talking about earlier with the Orioles. And Mike Elias, the GM there, being entrusted to handle their deadline if indeed this is the direction they continue going with him as their GM. Ben Cherington is in his 6th year. He might not be back after this season. They just fired their manager, who is also in his 6th year. So are you going to have Ben Cherington, a GM you might be firing, trade Paul Skeens? Is that the decision you want to make? I just don't see this happening right now. Can it happen in the future under a new GM if that indeed is what happens? Oh, yes, I can see that very much in the near future. All right, the next question. This one comes from Rocky, who asks, who's the next manager to be fired? Rocky, I actually believe we might be done for a little bit. We've had 3 managers fired before June. That's the first time it has happened since 2002. That's right. 3 managers fired before June for the first time since 2002. But that doesn't answer your question. Your question is, who's next? And if there was one manager I would guess might be in trouble, but not yet, it could be John Schneider of the Blue Jays. Now, the Blue Jays keep talking about how they're fighting, how there's a different spirit this year, how they're really kind of together as a team, and that's great. Good to hear. And a good reflection in some ways on the manager. But they're sub 500 right now, and they're a team that has its moments, but a team that still is quite flawed. Their rotation has been something of a disappointment so far. They've had some good things happen offensively, but not with the rotation. Not hitting home runs either. Santander has been hurt. So do I think that leads to John Schneider getting fired? Not necessarily. But here, too, is an interesting situation with the entire leadership structure. We all know Russ Atkins and Mark Shapiro, they are under scrutiny. Russ Atkins, the GM, Mark Shapiro, the president. Do they fire the manager while they're under scrutiny? Well, maybe. Maybe they try to salvage the season if they feel it needs salvaging. But I don't believe the Blue Jays are there yet. Come the offseason, we could see some different things happen in different franchises' situations with their manager. All right, finally, the final question. And this one comes from Henry Kunkel, who asks, who is the most interesting player you've ever covered and why? The answer I always give to this is Pedro Martinez. And it kind of harkens back to what I was talking about earlier with Devers, though Pedro was an entirely different guy. But Red Sox drama. There's a long history of Red Sox drama. And Pedro was the principal actor in that drama during the years he was there. I know Manny was there. I know Big Papi was there. But there was always some kind of tumult around Pedro. And beyond that, he was a great, great pitcher and so much fun to watch. So I loved covering Pedro because he was so much fun to watch. He was so compelling as a player, period. And I love covering him because there was always something. If you remember the Mango Tree press conference at Yankee Stadium when he said, hey, I was a kid sitting under a mango tree in the Dominican, and now I'm commanding the attention of the entire city of New York. It was always something with Pedro, and good stuff for the most part. Yeah, he had some diva in him, okay. A lot of players do. But covering Pedro was a ton of fun. I loved every second of it. So he is the guy that I would choose to be the most interesting player I've ever covered. All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us, for your questions, for joining us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. You know where to find us. Like us, subscribe to us. We will be back Thursday with our normal live show. Myself, Alana Rizzo. Have a great week, everyone.
Let's shout out the BetMGM First Bet $1,500 offer when you use the bonus code FOUL. Get that offer when you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app or at BetMGM.com. Sign up, enter that bonus code FOUL, and deposit at least $10 into your new account. Place your first wager and receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. If the bet does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Gambling problem or concern? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.